Have you ever noticed how people only realize your value the moment you're gone? It's strange, isn't it? You give, you care, you're present every single day, not because you have to, but because it's who you are. But over time, your presence becomes expected. Your kindness turns invisible. Your consistency becomes background noise. Until one day you go silent. No arguments, no announcement, just absence. And in that absence, everything shifts. They feel it first as confusion, then as discomfort, then as loss. You weren't just someone who filled space. You were the space that held them together. And when that space vanishes, so does their sense of control. They scramble for answers, but you're no longer there to explain. This is the power of walking away, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, out of quiet strength, out of the decision to protect your peace. Sometimes the boldest thing you can do is to disappear completely, not to hurt them, but to finally return to yourself. They never expected you to leave. In their mind, you were always supposed to be there, the one who forgives, the one who stays, the one who never walks away. So when you disappear, it doesn't just catch them off guard, it shatters their illusion. They thought they had time to take you for granted, time to fix things later, time to ignore what you needed again and again. But now time has run out, and what fills the space you once held is silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that echoes. They begin to feel the sting, not because you said something cruel, not because you made a scene, but because you didn't say anything at all. You just left. No closure, no explanation, just gone. And suddenly they feel small, because for the first time they realize they never had control. They never truly saw you. They only saw what you gave. And now, with nothing left to take, they're forced to sit with what they've lost. Not a partner, not a friend, but the quiet presence that made everything feel whole. Let them feel that sting. Let them wonder why it hurt so much. Let them realize what they dismissed was never ordinary. It was rare. It was steady. It was you. They thought the silence would fade, that maybe it was just a phase. Maybe you'd come back like you always did. But days pass, then weeks, and you're still gone. That's when the void begins to grow. It starts quietly. They reach for their phone, instinctively, to check for your message. Nothing. They scroll through old conversations looking for signs. Still nothing. Suddenly the absence becomes real. You're not just offline, you're unreachable. And that's when the discomfort turns into something deeper. They feel the emptiness. Not because they were alone, but because they were used to your presence anchoring their chaos, the conversations, the late night talks, the warmth in your words, your laughter when they least expected it, your calm when everything else was noise. They thought they could replace that, find someone new, distract themselves, go out, laugh, drink, post, pretend. But there's a difference between filling time and filling a void. The people they run to feel shallow, the distractions lose flavor, the nights stretch longer, and every moment of silence reminds them of one thing: you're not there. That realization is subtle at first, then it becomes haunting. They miss the way you listened, how you remembered the smallest things, how you didn't just hear them, you understood them. Now they're surrounded by people who talk, but no one who truly sees them, and that contrast becomes unbearable. You became their safe place, and now that safety is gone. So they search, they stalk your social media, check every app, every post, every story, hoping for a glimpse, but there's nothing. You've vanished without a trace. No breadcrumbs, no updates, no clues, just silence. And that silence is louder than anything you ever said. It gnaws at them, not because they don't know where you are, but because they don't know who you've become without them. And that's what scares them most, that you might be happier now, stronger now, that the best version of you is the one they no longer have access to. So they keep looking, keep scrolling, keep hoping. But the more they search, the more they realize you're not coming back, and no one else makes them feel what you did. Now comes the obsession. At first it was curiosity, but now it's something darker, something they can't shake. They wake up with questions, go to sleep with questions, and in between, their mind runs in circles. Where are you? Who are you with? Have you moved on? They try to act unbothered, post pictures, laugh louder, pretend they're thriving, but behind every smile, there's a question that won't leave them alone. Why did you really leave? You see, when you disappear, you don't just remove yourself. You remove the story they told themselves about you, the narrative where they were in control, where they thought you needed them more than they needed you. But now the script has flipped, and they're no longer the author. They become detectives, checking your last scene, watching who follows you, who you follow. They ask mutual friends without asking, "Have you heard from them lately?" Always pretending they don't care, while dying inside for answers. But there are none, because you've left no trail, no stories, no status, no whispers, just space. And in that space, their imagination takes over. They picture you out in the world, confident, peaceful, untouched. They imagine someone new, someone who appreciates you the way they never did. And it burns, because the truth they fear most is that you're not suffering, you're not crying, you're not waiting, you're healing, you're building, you're rising. And the more they realize this, the more their questions become regrets. The more they want to know, not what you're doing, but how they ever thought you were replaceable. Because now you're a mystery. And mystery is irresistible. Not because it's manipulative, but because it signals power. Power they no longer have. Control they can't get back. Access they once wasted, now completely gone. And as they spiral deeper into their own obsession, you remain calm, silent, present, only to yourself, and that drives them insane. Now the mirror turns inward, and for the first time they begin to look at themselves. At first, it's subtle. Just a passing thought. Maybe I should have handled that differently. But then it grows. The silence you've left behind becomes a mirror they can't avoid, and what they see reflected isn't flattering. They remember the ignored messages, the cold responses, the times they rolled their eyes when you needed warmth, the moments they chose pride over compassion, and it hits. Not as a single blow, but as a slow, grinding realization that they were the reason, that the love they lost was because of their own doing. Regret begins to creep in, not because they lost someone, but because they lost someone who was real, genuine, patient, loyal. You gave them chance after chance, and they treated each one like it would never be the last. But now it was. And now all they have are memories they can't touch. They start to replay every interaction, what they said, what they should have said, how they shrugged off your hurt, how they didn't show up when it mattered. They scroll through your old photos, your words echo in their head, the ones they dismissed, the ones they misunderstood. Now in your absence, every word becomes sacred, every message a missed opportunity, every silence a consequence. And the worst part? There's no one to blame. You're not around to argue, not there to absorb their guilt, not available to soften their shame. So it builds, like pressure in a closed room, like weight on their chest that won't lift. They begin to wonder if it's too late, if maybe, just maybe, they can fix it. But they don't even know where to start, because the person they're apologizing to is no longer waiting. You've stepped into yourself, into your calm, into your clarity. And now, while they spiral through their own mistakes, you're not a part of their chaos anymore. You've become something stronger, something they can no longer touch. And every second they spend reflecting only deepens the pain of that truth. Now comes the desperation. After regret has eaten away at their pride, a new emotion rises, the urge to chase you. They want you back. Suddenly the silence is unbearable. The space you left behind feels too loud, and they can't take it anymore. They reach for their phone, type out a message, delete it, type it again. Send it at 2 a.m. I've been thinking about you. They like your old posts, react to stories you're not even posting. They try to make noise in a place where you've already gone quiet. This is what happens when the tables turn. You were once the one who checked in, who fought to keep the bond alive, but now it's their turn to feel the weight of being ignored. And it stings. They might call. They might ask mutual friends how you're doing. They might show up uninvited, hoping for a second chance. But here's what they don't understand. You're no longer the same person they left behind. You've tasted peace. You've rebuilt your center. You've learned that walking away wasn't the end, it was the beginning. So when they chase, you don't respond, not out of cruelty, but because you finally understand what it means to choose yourself, grow more frantic, a long message, a late-night voice note, a sudden apology for things they once laughed off. But you stay still because silence is your boundary now, and they've already crossed it too many times before. They want to prove they've changed, that they see your worth now, that they were just scared, confused, immature. But those realizations came too late. Now, the power dynamic has shifted. You are no longer the one seeking closure. You are the one who already found it within. They chase something that no longer needs to be caught. And the more they reach, the more they realize they are not chasing you. They are chasing the version of themselves that didn't destroy what they had. And that version is long gone. Just like you. That's when the games begin. Not because they're healed, not because they've moved on, but because they're desperate to get a reaction. They want to believe they still matter, that they can still affect you. So they start to play. A photo with someone new, a cryptic caption, a post designed to poke at the version of you they once knew, the one who cared too much, the one who couldn't walk away. But that version is gone. You don't flinch when they try to bait you. You don't respond when they drop passive-aggressive notes online. You don't even look, because you've outgrown the game. What they don't realize is that when you truly heal, you stop needing to prove anything. You don't chase clarity. You don't seek revenge. You simply rise. They, on the other hand, are stuck. They post to be seen, to be envied, to be missed. But when the views come and your attention doesn't, they panic. The things that once gave them power, withholding affection, playing hot and cold, acting like they didn't care, don't work anymore because you've stepped out of their world, out of the loop, out of the space where their validation held weight. Now they're the ones being ignored, and it hurts more than they expected. They'll try everything: indirect messages, mutual friend updates, even fake stories about how well they're doing. But deep down, they're not okay, because they know they're no longer your priority. They're no longer your peace, and most of all, they're no longer your power. So let them play, let them spiral, let them post and pretend. None of it touches you anymore, because you don't respond to noise. You only move with intention. And that silence, that grounded, unwavering silence, is louder than anything they'll ever say. At first, they tell themselves they're fine, that maybe it's better this way, that they can finally breathe. They call it freedom. They go out, stay busy, post pictures, convince everyone, and mostly themselves, that life without you feels lighter. But it's not freedom. It's denial wearing a brave face, because the truth always catches up, and it doesn't need a dramatic moment to do it. Sometimes it hits on a quiet Tuesday night, when the music stops, and they realize the silence isn't temporary, it's permanent. They scroll through endless distractions. They swipe right on faces they don't care to remember. They laugh louder than usual in public, but alone, they're haunted. Haunted by the realization that every attempt to replace you feels like drinking from an empty glass. At first, it's just emptiness. Then it becomes regret. Because all the people they tried to plug into the hole you left, they don't fit. No one texts like you did. No one looks at them the same. No one understands their chaos and stays calm through it. You were rare. They see that now. And so begins the battle. Half of them wants to believe they're better off. The other half knows they made the biggest mistake of their life. This is the war between relief and regret. They try to convince themselves that this distance is what they wanted, but the relief is thin, superficial, gone in a breath. Because underneath it all, they miss you. Not just the version of you that smiled, but the one who stayed when no one else did. The one who showed up when it was inconvenient. The one who gave without keeping score. Now they're left with highlights, not connection. Echoes, not presence. They feel the cost of their choices, but it's too late to renegotiate. And when they finally admit to themselves that what they lost was real, that no one else brings what you brought, The regret solidifies into truth. You are not just gone, you are free, and that freedom is something they no longer get to be part of. Eventually, the silence becomes too much. Not for you, but for them. Because silence isn't just quiet, it's a mirror, and it shows them everything they didn't want to see. They start to crack. The bravado fades, the posts slow down, the games lose their spark, and all that's left is the weight of what they lost, the weight of what they can't fix, the weight of your absence, which no distraction can lift. They start to remember things differently now, not with pride, but with pain. They think about the times you stayed up listening, the way you made them feel safe, the things you said that they brushed off, the little moments that didn't seem important until now. It's not just silence anymore. It's regret wrapped in loneliness. It's the ache of having had something real and letting it slip through their fingers. They start to spiral. They question themselves. Was I too harsh, too distant, too selfish? But the answers don't bring peace because you're not there to forgive them, not there to soften the blow, not there to say it's okay. So they sit with it, the memory of you, the shadow of who they were with you, and the reality of who they are without you. It's heavy, and it gets heavier with time, because unlike anger or sadness, silence lingers. It doesn't argue, it doesn't explain, it just exists. And the longer it exists, the more they feel the depth of what they lost. You were the calm in their storm, the consistency in their chaos. And now in the quiet that follows, they're left to face the one thing they always tried to avoid, themselves. And nothing is louder than being alone with your own mistakes. Then comes the fear. It doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly, like a shadow stretching across the floor, until it covers everything. At first, it's just a thought. What if they're really gone? What if they've moved on? What if I never get another chance? But that thought grows. It digs into their chest and settles there. Because now it's not just about missing you. It's about the possibility that someone else might find the version of you they took for granted. They imagine it. You smiling with someone new, being understood, being cherished, being chosen, fully, loudly, without hesitation. And that terrifies them, not because they don't want you to be happy, but because they were supposed to be the one to give you that, and they didn't. So now they're haunted by what could have been, by what should have been, by what they never bothered to protect. They start to act out, a long message, a call that goes unanswered, an apology that comes too late. They might even show up, not out of confidence, but out of panic, because now they're no longer holding the cards. They're on the outside of a story they used to be the center of. They can't sleep. They can't focus. They can't stop thinking about how easily they dismiss something so rare. And the worst part, you're not angry. You're not bitter. You're just gone. Gone from their orbit. Gone from their future. Gone from the version of themselves that felt safe when you were near. And in that realization, they don't feel free. They feel powerless. Because fear doesn't come from losing you. It comes from knowing they'll never get the chance to be in your life again. And finally comes the shift they never expected. Not in them, in you. Because what they feel last, what hits them the hardest, isn't your silence or even your absence, your evolution. You're no longer the person they left. No longer the version of you who tolerated crumbs, who waited, hoped, explained, forgave. You've outgrown all of that. They sense it, even from a distance. The calm in your energy, the clarity in your decisions, the peace you carry without needing anyone else to validate it. This is emotional independence, the place where you no longer look back, where your worth isn't up for negotiation, where your love isn't given to those who only understand its value. Once it's gone, you've stopped chasing, stopped proving, stopped explaining your heart to people who refuse to listen, and now you're rooted in something unshakable, not ego, not revenge, but presence, self-respect, alignment with your values. They feel it in every unanswered message, in every moment they check and still find nothing, in every realization that the door they once took for granted is now closed. Because now you're building without them, loving without them, thriving without the need for their approval. And that is what breaks them. Not because you wanted to hurt them, but because you stopped needing them to heal. You've become untouchable. Not by being cold, but by becoming whole. This is your power. Not the kind that controls others, but the kind that commands your own life. You walk forward, not with bitterness, but with grace. Not with vengeance, but with wisdom. You understand now, some people don't deserve access to your energy. Some doors must close so you can finally breathe. And in that breath, you find everything they never gave you. Peace, clarity, freedom. You didn't lose them. You found yourself.